to the Pink Elephant, guys. I'm Shanae, and if this is your first time here, thank you so much for joining me. And if you are back again, thank you so much for coming back. You know I love you for it. So y'all, today is a really great treat. So if you go back to some of my videos, maybe from either last year or even earlier this year, you will know that I've been in a transition period for a while as it relates to my journey of finding my passion, work, leaving work, going into my business full time, and all those things. It's just a lot of things happening, right? So today we have a really special treat because we get to speak to none other than Dr. Cris. All right, y'all. So I'm going to tell you some things about Dr. Cris. Now, this does not in any way cover her full resume or experience, but it'll give you a glimpse into who we get to speak to today. All right. So Dr. Crystal Green Brown is a college professor with over 20 years of experience helping students in fashion marketing, retail, and career development. As a career researcher, she has developed a unique career identification model that guides seekers to identify their dream jobs and best fit work environments. And you guys know that is important over here as a Pink Elephant, right? She is also a certified career coach with over 15 years of experience and expertise, and she was recently named one of Charlotte's best coaches. Dr. Cris is also a spiritual vision board expert. She is also a published author. She's published multiple spiritually enriched books, including her #1 bestseller, Visual Prayer: How to Create a Spiritual Vision Board. So with that being said, welcome Dr. Cris to our show. I'm so happy you're here and you look beautiful. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you, Shanae. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for that great introduction. It was
Yes.
wonderful.
Listen, your resume, and even as I get to speak to you off to the side, like you've done so much, you have so much expertise. And I mean, it's just a lot that you can really give us today. And so I'm so excited to be able to talk to you. Before we even jump into like the real deal, all the things, I like to get to know you a little bit more. A lot of my show is about just conversation, connecting with real people, specifically real women. And so I want to make sure that our audience feels right at home and we're all sisters here. Like we are family. So we're going to get to know you a little bit more. And you guys, Dr. Cris does not know the questions I'm getting ready to ask her. So it's going to be even more fun. So finish this statement, okay? Surprisingly, I would rather blank than blank.
I would rather write songs professionally for a living than doing what I'm currently doing.
Ooh, write songs. So Dr. Cris, do you have a musical background, or like let's talk about that part.
All right, so I firmly believe that everyone has gifts, and what I mean by that is something that comes naturally for you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was baptized, and I think I was in my early teens, what I recognized after I was baptized is that I started just singing these songs just randomly, and I could remember the songs. When the songs would come to me, they came with a melody and lyrics. So I believe that baptism had a lot to do with my new gift, or this gift of being really good at writing songs.
Wow. Okay. And how old were you when you got
I
baptized?
was in my, I would say my early teens. I can't remember exactly how old I was. I want to say around maybe 14,
Wow.
15. Yeah. But I used to write songs all the time. I mean, they would just literally just come to me. I would just write them down. I could sing them. I would have the melody, and yeah, I kind of miss that because I've stopped doing it, but I can remember all of the songs that I've written, and it's
Wow.
close to like 70 songs.
Do you know that like sometimes Stevie Wonder performs his songs and he forgets the lyrics?
No, I didn't know that.
Okay. So the fact that you can remember songs that you wrote over the years is like, that is pretty phenomenal. Also, too, y'all, this is another testament to the fact that Dr. Cris is like multi-talented, and she, like that's pretty amazing, Dr. Cris. Like it's a gift to be able to write songs. So that's pretty cool. Okay. If I were a reality TV star, what would be the name of my show? Your show.
I manifested that.
Ooh, I like that, Dr. Cris. Okay, Netflix. Okay, I'm just saying you might need to, because that is actually really good. Different from what we have on TV right now, because it would be very inspirational and motivating for viewers. I love that. I love that. Okay. All right. What is something about me that sounds fake, but is actually 100% true?
Whoa. Sounds fake. Okay. All right. Well, so I was going to say that a lot of people really don't believe that I manifested my husband in 4 months. Yeah, a lot of people don't believe that.
Okay.
Or, I have the perception that people don't believe that.
Why do you think that is, that people don't believe you?
Because when you think about the timing, I mean, 4 months, that's a small amount of time to manifest, exactly what you want. But the backstory is that, I was in my we were both in our early 40s, but I had been praying seriously since my 20s. But I didn't surrender it. I didn't reframe my vision and surrender it. So I didn't really apply the spiritual vision board principles until my early 40s. So yeah.
So we're gonna run through that whole manifestation, because let me tell you something. Our audience here is is diverse. We have some women who are married with kids. We have women who are younger, so like 20s, 25, 30 range. And then we have a lot of women who are single, who aspire to be married, some divorced. So we have a wide range of audience members on our show. And I think that the topic of marriage and relationships tend to come up a lot, especially when other women run into me. I feel like that's always a topic of discussion of, getting married, how and why, and when do you know, and all those things. So I know that our listeners would be like really, they would love to hear that story. So we're going to go back to that. All right.
Okay.
Last question. What is at the top of your bucket list?
Oh, okay. So I would really like to take a vacation with my husband to Hawaii. So I've been to Hawaii before.
Okay.
And my husband has traveled a lot, but we have not been to Hawaii together. So I would love to do that.
I love that. I haven't been to Hawaii at all. So I'm no experience been going to Hawaii. But Dr. Cris, so I had some friends, I was with some friends this weekend. We were at a wedding and we started talking about vacations. And she said that the Hawaii vacation almost took her out because of the flight. So what's the flight time like?
Yeah, so I have to admit, it's been more than a decade when I went to Hawaii. And so the flight there was pleasant because it was my sister and myself, and we had selected seats. It was pleasant. But the flight coming back, from what I recall, I loved Hawaii so much. We extended our stay, and then coming back, I didn't have that selected seat, so I had to sit in the middle. And so I'm a pretty petite girl, so I was sitting in the middle seat between two heavier set people, and I didn't have very much room. So it was absolutely miserable. And then when you couple that with the amount of time that you spend on that plane and you're not able to really move, you can't really get comfortable. So yeah, I think that's when you realize that if you can make enough money and you can own a private plane, that would be a great opportunity to take a private plane to any destination. But yeah.
Listen, I
It
like
was not the best experience getting there, coming back. But once you get there, I understand why people call Hawaii paradise, because it is absolutely beautiful.
uh,
Absolutely beautiful.
okay. So what I hear you saying is, because I'm gonna be honest with you, so guys, you guys know I live in South Carolina on the East Coast, and I used to travel a lot to the West Coast, and I hate traveling to the West Coast because of the time of the flight. I mean, now I will say I do still have that on my list of places that I want to go. But now that I'm getting older and I'm starting to think about things like that, like the flight time, it almost is like, ooh, now do I really want to go? Because, you
You
know,
do.
so okay.
You want to go.
I do. Okay. Period. Like, okay. Take a little Benadryl, Shanae, go to sleep. You'll be all right. Okay. I can deal with that. I can deal with that. Well, thank you, Dr. Cris, for participating in those questions here. So I want you to tell me pretty much like your journey and how it led you here to be in a place where you're now creating a pretty much blueprint for those of us who would like to start to materialize or see these things come to pass that we want. How did you even get to this point of creating such a thing?
Wow. Well, I guess when I think about the beginning, it all started with an episode of Oprah. So this was way back in the day. So
Okay.
she had the founders of The Secret on her show. And this is when I still lived in Ohio. So I watched the episode and then I ended up purchasing the movie. I watched the movie a couple of times. I moved to North Carolina. And so my life was just on the steady path of I had landed my dream job as a full-time professor in Charlotte. I was driving my dream car. I was healthy. Everything was just aligned. But I was just dating. So there was guys that I would date, but none of them was the one. And I was just growing more and more frustrated with meeting all of these guys and not finding the one. And I'm like, how can I have so many things aligned that I know that's, God's blessing for my life, but I haven't manifested my husband. I haven't been blessed with my husband. So it was Thanksgiving 2010. I actually thought that I would be spending that particular Thanksgiving with my then boyfriend who had broke up with me a couple of weeks before. And
Wow.
so I'm at my apartment Thanksgiving alone, and I decided to create a vision board. So I'm constructing the vision board and I'm putting everything together. And prior to that, I had, played around with vision boards before, but I was never serious. At this particular time, Thanksgiving 2010, single, like I said, I'm in my 40s. I was serious. I was serious because I was so frustrated that I was in my 40s and I had these plans to get married at 27, have 3 kids, and that didn't happen. So now I'm in my 40s and I still don't have a man. So I'm creating my my vision board, and I remember crying out to God, why isn't this working? Why isn't my vision board working? Where's my husband? Because I'm angry. And I could hear my spirit, God tell me, where ask, believe, receive comes from. And that, boom, that was it. So that was the catalyst behind everything. Shanae, I tell you, when I think back to that moment, ask, believe, receive is found in both Matthew and Mark. So just the acknowledgement of where those scriptures come from. So it's not, it's not the law of attraction, because when you watch the movies, The Secret, when you read the book, it's not just in the book and the movie. It's the acknowledgement of knowing that this is a scripture and where that scripture comes from, and that this is a biblical principle. And once I've applied it and I started repeating these scriptures as I was creating the board, everything literally changed. And 4 months later, I met Randy. And I had doubts at first that he was the one. And then he told me, I believe God brought us together. Ooh. And then he said it again, I believe God brought us together. So yeah, that was it. So that was the beginning of my journey with spiritual vision boards and knowing, wow, I'm onto something here. This really works.
And I'm not sure, did you have other things on your board too, other than like getting married, or was that how you started? Like your focus and your intention was specific, like, you know how sometimes you have to be very like, this is the focus. What did you have on there, or how was that process?
So I remember there was a picture of me, um, and I had cut the picture out, and then I found a picture of this black man, this attractive black man, and then I put us together on the board, and then I wrote down a list of all of the things that I wanted in a husband, and the top of that list was equally yoked. And then I explained to myself what equally yoked mean, because when you think about meeting someone, they can say they're a Christian. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to be mean or negative, but a lot of people say they're a Christian, but are you guys on the same level?
Right, absolutely.
And see, Randy and I are on the same level, and we always agree. We have always agreed on everything when it comes to Christianity and spirituality. I was going to another church when I met Randy, and I ended up quitting my church and going to his church because it was his family church. But that idea of being equally yoked was so important. And I have to stop and say, reframing my vision from what I thought I wanted to what God wanted for me is what made the difference.
Digging deeper into that, right? The part in my journey where I found like a aha moment, since we are referencing Oprah, I love you, Oprah. Like I love Oprah too. So, and by the way, I have to admit, I have never seen The Secret and I have never read the book. However, I remember The Secret being when I was growing up, they did like a Bible study series at our church that my mom was a part of, and they were talking about The Secret.
Really?
So, I remember that being like a big thing at that time. So now that we're talking about it today, I'm going to definitely go watch the movie, and I'm also going to read the book. So I will definitely do that. But I remember like a point in my journey where I had to like really ask myself about like believing something, right? Because sometimes we're like, okay, I believe it's going to happen. But then that little bit of doubt that's there changes whether or not that thing happens, right? And so it was a moment for me of learning like what faith really meant, because of course I could someone, or I'm not going to say I could, or someone could definitely put a picture of themselves on their board, find a guy that they feel like is attractive and do those very things. But do you believe that there is a certain level of faith that you had, or conviction of knowing that this is happening? Like what internally, spiritually, where were you at that point in your journey?
Yeah, so Shanae, there were a couple of things that were going on. So one thing with me, yes, there was faith, but there was also faith with Randy. So with the spiritual vision board process, you'll recognize that there's a frequency level that, so if you want to manifest a husband or soulmate, there's a frequency that you and that person has to be on. And I didn't realize this at that time. But in hindsight, when I think back, when I would go to the grocery store, I would literally attract people. So I would look up and I would look around. And because I was on this higher frequency, I could see people watching. I'm like, what's going on? You know? So, but Randy was also on that same frequency. So when we met, it was almost as though we were in sync. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, to answer your question, you can have doubt, but for me, the faith was more, I have to be honest, I was angry.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know how the level of anger plays in my faith, but I can remember saying things like, God, you have made promises to me.
Mm-hmm.
And these are your promises.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the promises is, if you read Genesis, it talks about God has made a helpmate for Adam. So Eve is a helpmate for Adam. So in my anger, I would say I am a helpmate for my husband. So where is he? And so yeah, I got a little heated in my discussion with
Mm-hmm.
with God. But notice how I phrased it. I am a helpmate for my husband. So that's an affirmation. So I started using these affirmations, placing them on my board, repeating them consistently. And I think there was a level of seriousness that God recognized. Okay, yeah, she's ready.
There you go. There it is.
She's ready. She's done everything else that I've told her to do. And yeah, she's ready.
So, okay. So, with that being said, because I like the she's ready part, do you think up until that moment you weren't ready?
I would say, had I married any of the guys that I was dating prior to Randy, and I tell Randy this all the time, I would either be divorced or miserable or both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's really highlight that real quick because I like to tell people because again going back to marriage and marriage being a discussion, I find that like because I got married and my friends are still maybe not married or maybe, slowly starting to get into relationships, I find myself having conversations about how God protected me from things, right? And how, as they're navigating these dates and they're navigating like, this didn't work out, I'm like, be happy because something, if it did keep going, where would you be? And also understanding that like when God has someone for you, um, you don't have to struggle and have to like argue and everything doesn't have to be forced to fit, and that's a really big part of knowing like when God says yes versus when you trying to say yes, you can't
Exactly. Oh,
you
yeah, you're so right.
you can't say yes to that. God didn't say yes to that. And we
Mm-hmm.
could try to make it look cute. We could try to make it look, oh well, we just bumped into each other and it's just no. You weren't supposed to be over there anyway. So you didn't supposed to bump into him. So like I find that such a really, really great point in your story because I think like knowing and understanding like God's yes versus our yes, that helps us also have a little bit more peace about things as opposed to always trying to take it upon ourselves to make things work or move things around. So I think that's amazing. I want to get just a little bit more information on how you manifested your husband and how you met your husband, and also to like how you got to where you are now, how long you've been married. So give us a little bit more on all of those things and how you met. Just we want the tea on that.
Okay, so again, it started with creating this spiritual vision board, and it was a small board, so I'm not sure, but you can probably see a corner of my spiritual vision board now, and it's huge. It's really huge, but that first one was small. And I just had a picture of myself, and I just found this attractive guy in a magazine, a black guy, because I wanted to marry a brother. So I coupled us together in the middle of my spiritual vision board. And then I had already developed a list of everything that I was looking for. And again, I think I need to re-emphasize this. So I surrendered my original list.
Ooh.
The things that I thought that
Mm-hmm.
I needed. When I think back, so when I was working on my master's degree, I was thinking, oh, I need to have a man that has this. Yeah. You have to reframe your vision based on the values that God has given you. And the top of that list was being equally yoked. And then everything kind of flowed from there. So of course you want to be attracted to your husband.
Okay.
So
Well,
I mean,
not of course, because let me tell you this. Okay. I have been one to be like, guys, be open. Okay. I'm gonna be honest, because sometimes my friends give me a hard time, Dr. Cris, now. So I'm really glad that we get to talk about this, because I can't wait to share this episode with them. So I'm like, if you are wanting to meet new people, I feel like to a certain extent, you can't have 6'5", dark skin, waves. His fingernails have to be right above his finger. He needs a birthmark on his cheek. Like he needs muscles on his shoulders. Like the list is just like extensive. I feel like some stuff is just like, open yourself up. What if he is a light-skinned guy? I tell my friends, they eliminating a whole group of people. So how important is it for women to be exactly honest about what they want, and should they stick to only those things when they create their board?
that is such a good question.
Because
that is such a good question. Again, you have to reframe your vision. And I say that because so I had like a 6-ish guy originally. And then I recognized what's more important, a 6-ish guy or a guy that is taller than me. I mean, what's really important? So I know people whose husbands are shorter than them, but what was really important to me was a man that was taller than me. So he didn't have to be 6 foot, but he had to be taller than me.
okay.
So Randy's taller than I am. I really wanted someone that I was attracted to. So I will say this, one of the things that really put it over the edge, because God's going to give you more than what you ask for. Yeah, so God is going to, and some of the things that you ask for, you're not going to know all of the things that you need. So that's why it's important to surrender it and turn it over to God. So one of the things I didn't ask for that, but I recognize readily in Randy, and this might sound simplistic, was his ability to make a decision quickly.
Oh, that's good. Ooh.
So he has wisdom. He's able to discern, really quickly. And I had not had that in the past. And let me say something else too. So there was other guys that I dated. There was a lot of red flags with these other guys. And my friends would tell me, girl, didn't you see? And I didn't see it because I was just so into the moment. But when I met Randy, there were no red flags. So all of the things that I had saw with the other guys, it was easy with Randy, because now I can say, wow, Randy's not doing that. But God made it easy to discern that he was the one.
That's good. I mean, and even with what you share, I think is really, it helps to self-evaluate priorities. And when, again, going back to like really understanding what's more important, and honestly having maybe some help with with the coaching session that you do, because manifestation in previous years was such a big deal and big thing. I think people were getting ahead of themselves by having like this list of things, but going back to what's really important, I'd rather have, maybe we at eye level with my heels on. I may have wanted them to be a little bit tall. I wanted to look up, 7 feet. I wanted to just curl up like a ball and he'd be so tall, but then he may not have had time for me. The job that he had may not have worked for, so I think that is so important and such a great point to drive home, in understanding that, like, you really do have to be honest with yourself. Like, come on now, what do I really need? And going back to that, your point, sometimes we don't even recognize the things that we need. And so I love that about your story. Can you and will you share how you guys met?
Yes.
Okay.
So we met March 2011. So again, I created my spiritual vision board Thanksgiving 2010. We met March 2011. So it was exactly 4 months. And we've been together since March 2011. We got married March 2016. But yeah, we met online. So, when you're online, there's pictures.
Yeah.
And one of the pictures that Randy had, I was like, wow, this guy.
And your husband is handsome, Dr. Cris.
this guy. So Randy likes to fish. And in this particular picture, he had his shirt off, he was holding a fish, and you could see his abs. And I was like, whoa. Whoa. So yeah, that picture of him with his shirt off, that pretty much got me.
I love this because I've been making people push their boundaries as it relates to like being open, right? To other people and things, and not being so stuck on, this, and this. But your story and your experience is an example of you can get exactly what you want. Like,
oh, absolutely. And see, that's just how God works. It's not just exactly what you want, it's more. So he gives you more than what you ask for. So for example, the home that we're living in now is our retirement home. And so Randy and I manifested this together, and we literally wrote down a list of all of our must-haves. So we got everything on the list, but then he gave us much more. And that's how it works. Even with my dream job, I wrote everything that I needed with a dream job, and then he'll exceed that. So he'll give you more compensation, he'll give you more flexibility if that's what you're looking for. I had health issues on and off with different areas. So those health issues are no longer an issue. Every area of my life. And you get to the point where you become so overwhelmed because you're so grateful,
right,
of all of the blessings that you've been blessed with. And let me back up and say, God is no respecter of persons. So I'm not sitting on this podcast, this interview, and I'm bragging. I'm saying that everything that I have been blessed with, you can be blessed with too.
yes,
You can be blessed with too, even if you choose not to go through Spiritual Vision Board Academy, because all Spiritual Vision Board Academy is prayer. The book is called Visual Prayer. Spiritual Vision Board Academy is based on taking your prayer experience to the next level. So you're not just verbalizing your prayer, you're able to create images that are associated with the desires of your heart. But God loves all of us. So just how he's blessed me, just how he's blessed you, Shanae, he will bless anybody and everybody. He loves all of us.
All right. And now I do want to highlight the Spiritual Vision Board Academy, because I want to talk about how your journey and your process of manifesting your husband led to this particular academy, what you've birthed, right? What God, the vision God gave you, and now you've birthed this particular plan for others so that they can also get to happy or get to what God has for them, right? So I wanted you to kind of like give us an idea or help other listeners understand spiritual vision boards and how it differs, because I know you did touch on that, but how it differs from a regular vision board.
Yeah, so the primary difference between a vision board and a spiritual vision board is that spiritual vision boards acknowledge God. There's biblical principles, there's scriptures. So the whole foundation is God and acknowledging God, where vision boards acknowledge the law of attraction. So my vision boards in the past didn't work because God told me, when I asked him, why isn't this working for me? He told me, where ask, believe, receive comes from. And so it's my understanding that as Christians, he holds us to a higher standard. And I'm not saying that people who are not Christians, he doesn't love you, and he loves everybody. But when you know better, you should do better. And so he was sharing with me, better. Mm-hmm. You've been raised in the church. You read the Bible. You've heard, ask, believe, receive. It's found in both Matthew and Mark. So you know better. You know where it comes from. So if you know where it comes from, and if you acknowledge where it comes from, you're more likely to manifest the desires of your heart as you partner with God in the process. And you want to include him in everything you do. I mean, that's a principle. Include God in everything that you do. So if you want your desires of your heart to succeed, you want to include him. And that's what the Spiritual Vision Board Academy is all about. It's teaching you the difference. It's teaching you how to include God in the process so that you have clarity about your goals, specifically how to prioritize them. And most importantly, you use those scriptures as a foundation so that you can really receive your goals.
So we know that we talked about it as it relates to love and relationships and marriage, right? But for those of us, maybe even for careers, how does that principle work the same way in a career? And then if it does, like, can you walk us through, like you just did, how the alignment of the career choices applies to a spiritual vision board?
Yeah, so I actually found that there's 3 major areas. So there's your soulmate. I should say relationships, because it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. So it's relationships, it's health and wellness, and it's also career. So your dream job. It's just identifying the clarity. So with God, we should have a purpose. Everyone has these gifts. So I mentioned that at the top of the show. I would really love to use my songwriting skills in my career. And, it's not done for me. Eventually, hopefully, somehow I'll still be able to do that. But we all have these gifts. And if you use those gifts somehow in your purpose, in your career, it'll be easier for things to kind of line up and for God to be able to bless it and help you along your way. But yeah, it's easier to find clarity with your career if you focus on, what are your gifts? What are you good at?
What do you say to people who don't know what they're good at? And I say that because I get that question a lot from a lot of the clients that I have, or those women who've waited to speak to me after I share my story. I feel like one of the common things that I hear is like, I don't know what I'm good at. So what do you say to that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, everyone's good at something. Typically, everyone is good at more than just 1 or 2 things. So sometimes it takes, working with a coach so that coach can help you to pull out what are those things that you can identify that you're really good at. But yeah, everyone is good at more than 1 thing.
And it's funny because some of us we struggle because we're good at too many things. And then you're like, gosh, oh my goodness, I don't know what to focus on. So even going through this process through the Spiritual Vision Board Academy, does that kind of help those people who maybe feel like it's an overload of things? How can I focus in?
Absolutely, it helps. Well, with Spiritual Vision Board Academy, first of all, you're working with me. I am a certified coach. I'm also an ICF trained coach. So having those credentials and that experience, it helps me to help you to gain clarity and identify what it is that you should work on. So what are those priorities that you should put in place first? And then what are sort of like the secondary goals? But yeah, so you're working with me one-on-one. So in addition to the one-on-one, I also have group coaching sessions once a month. So you'll be able to meet some of the other participants in the academy. And that really helps because you'll be able to lean on other Christians, I would say believers and non-believers. So we have sort of like a mixture that's typically among the participants. But having that sense of community really helps also.
Um, so Dr. Cris, I find that those people who say like, I don't know what I'm good at. I'm just, I don't know where to start, or maybe I feel like I have so many places to start. I often tell them, and I don't know if this is a good thing or not. You can let me know your opinion on this, but sometimes I tell them to maybe ask someone that they trust, what do they think they're good at? Because I think even for me, like the blinders of, is this really even something? You and I have talked offline, and we talk about the things that I like to do. And you're like, but that is something, that's something that you can do. So sometimes having a friend or someone you trust, I feel it helps kind of help you see yourself a little bit differently. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, so, and then I would ask more than just one person so that you get multiple opinions. But I would say maybe no more than 2 or 3 people. If you ask three, then you can, what is the consensus? What is at least 2 people saying about what are you good at? So yeah, that's a great idea.
I like to think of myself as a creator. A lot of times your mind starts to get all these ideas, and you like lean here, and then, oh my goodness, I like that. And you lean there. And after a while, it's just like ideas. It's no type of focus to get to the goal. And I think what I'm hearing you say about the academy is that it's intentional. The strategy that you've built is intentional. So if you could walk us through the process of the Spiritual Vision Board Academy and what that looks like as someone who enrolls into this particular academy.
Oh yeah, sure. So it is a step-by-step process. And when you think about the spiritual vision board process itself, it's 4 steps. So it's ask, believe, receive, and revise. But prior to that, there's a getting started module, because you don't want to just jump into creating a vision board, a spiritual vision board, and you're not ready. So the getting started module helps you to gain clarity behind what is it that you really want to manifest. It helps you to identify like when is the best time for you to, because this might not be the best time. Typically, a lot of people think about New Year's resolutions as a really good time to create a vision board or a spiritual vision board. So I talk about time. And then there's 2 different options when it comes to creating a spiritual vision board. You can create a digital version, which is really easy, just using a computer. Typically, most people use Canva, or you can create a physical version. So I walk you through each of the different options, and you end up picking, which one is best for you. And eventually you can create both. But for your first initial spiritual vision board, you want to select one. So that getting started module is pretty packed with information about what are all the things that you do in order to get started. And I guess the primary thing that I emphasize is prayer. So you have to have this regular dialogue with God about what is it that because it's not just about you. So when you ask God in, you have invited him into helping you, guiding you, walking you through the process. So it's no longer about you. It's about how you are partnering with God and the Holy Spirit to guide you to manifest what is best for your life. And then you have to keep in mind the promises that he made. So Jeremiah 29:11 states that he has this good plan for your life. So if he has a good plan, you have to trust that he has a good plan and lean on him to guide you through the process. Having said all of that, there's 5 modules, and that getting started is the most important module. And then ask is the construction process of the spiritual vision board. Step number 2 is believe. Believe is the activation process. 3 is receive. So taking physical possession of whatever it is that you have, requested from God. And then the last one is revise. So the idea there is you've manifested what it is that has been the desires of your heart. And now it's time to revise your spiritual vision board based on, the gifts and blessings that you've received.
Okay, so because I'm liking that it breaks it down, especially for those of us who we've never taken the time out to be intentional like this. And so, because I have not done that, I'm thinking about some things that I had in my mind that I wanted to do. It didn't necessarily work, to your point, because I just skipped right to what I wanted it to look like, not understanding that, am I even asking for the right things? And then I'm not even believing that thing because I done moved on to something else and I forgot that I even
Mm.
had that as a goal. And then, and then the receiving part, I look around and I'm mad that I haven't received anything, but I haven't even done the steps to get to the part where God can show himself like, mighty in what I'm asking of him. So I really like the fact that the academy makes you slow down to have to really focus in on what you're asking for. Now, with that though, do you encourage your students to only focus on one thing, or do you ask, like, do you allow students to have multiple things on their vision board, on their spiritual vision board?
So realistically, we all have multiple goals. So even though going back to my very first spiritual vision board, it was, at that time, like I said, I was working my dream job. So I only wanted a husband. So that was then. That was my very first one. But in reality, we do have multiple goals. So the idea is that you want to prioritize those goals.
Okay.
And I'll share with you, what are the ways that you want to be able to prioritize your goals on your board. But yeah, I don't know of anyone who probably just has, one goal that they want to, achieve.
Well, that's good too that you get to kind of like get that priority list, because again, I think prioritizing is one of the habits that a lot of us we want to be better about in all areas of our lives. But again, having a certified coach that can literally help you break down and understand what's priority versus just desire. Like, you want that, but that is not a priority. So let's talk more about your actual program. So I know you mentioned that you have the academy set up to have personal sessions or one-on-ones with you, and then there's also a community. So what does that look like as far as the scheduling of the sessions and having those one-on-ones, and then participating in the community conversations?
So the group sessions are scheduled for Wednesday at
Okay.
12 noon, starting in January. So I'm thinking probably the third week is when they'll start. So every third Wednesday of the month at 12 noon. And I'm also thinking perhaps at 6 o'clock if for those who cannot make the 12 noon meeting.
Okay.
And then for the one-on-ones, everyone will meet with me at least twice. So once at the beginning, so that we'll be able to clarify again, you want to be intentional. What are the goals that you want to place on your spiritual vision board? And then we'll just talk through the process and I'll help you to get a better understanding of maybe this is what we should focus on now. Perhaps this will be a secondary goal. But the whole idea is getting a clear understanding and again being intentional about what it is that you want to achieve this time around. And then perhaps the other goals are something that you can achieve at another time. So there's two one-on-ones with me, and then there's one group coaching session every month.
Okay. And then in terms of the time frame to actually complete the program, what does that look like, or is it different for different people? What's that like?
Yeah, so it's different for different people just because when we think about achieving your goals, it's going to be different. Like, so for me, when I landed or when I was blessed with my husband, it was 4 months. So you don't know when God is going to bless you. So I will continue to have the group coaching sessions, once a month.
Okay.
The one-on-ones is up to you. You dictate or you determine what's best for you. I want to meet with you at the beginning, and then you select the second one-on-one. And so you have control of that, whatever works best for you.
We would love to hear like how it's been for other students.
Sure. So I think one of the most profound manifestations was a student who, so she literally, I guess, practiced affirmations even prior to enrolling in Spiritual Vision Board Academy. But her result was, well, let me share with you what her situation was. She was diagnosed with a latter stage of breast cancer, and I'm not sure what stage. I'm not sure if it was stage 3 or stage 4, but it was. Now that I think about it, it was probably stage 4, because she was told that she needed to return to the hospital the next day to prepare for surgery. So she opted to not return to the hospital the next day. Instead, she used the Spiritual Vision Board process to develop affirmations, and she just wrote out affirmations based on scriptures, placed them all over her home, and she repeated those affirmations. And then when you think about one of the steps of the Spiritual Vision Board process, and this is in step number 2, believe, there's a process called spiritual enlightenment. It's basically when the Holy Spirit guides you, provides you with wisdom. So another thing that this particular participant received knowledge to do was just to live a healthier lifestyle. So she started conducting research of all the things that she needed to do to live a healthier lifestyle. So I'm not going to go into all the things that she did, but to make a long story shorter, when she did return to her doctor, they did not find a trace of cancer anywhere. And it turned out that she was a lot healthier during that visit than she was during her first visit. So everything had changed for her in terms of her health. And just another really quick story. So there was a woman who found my book right after I had published it. So this was January 2015. And she was recently laid off. And she wanted to return to the workforce in a similar position. And I started off saying young, but she wasn't young. So she was in her early 60s. So the challenge there is, okay, so she's a Black woman, early 60s. So you already have 2 strikes against you, right? So actually 3. So you're a woman, you're Black, and you're in your early 60s.
Yeah.
So her whole goal was to return to a position that she had before she was laid off. So she had a Spiritual Vision Board party January 2025. And I can't remember exactly how many years later, but she ended up landing a position that was the head of one of the top radio stations in Atlanta. Her compensation was she wouldn't tell me how much money she was making, but her compensation was so high. She replenished her savings account, replenished her 401k, purchased a brand new home, paid it off, and then she retired last year. And when you think about what God can do, He can do beyond what you can think or imagine. So He showed out for her.
Yes, He did. Yeah. Lord,
Showed
please
out big
for me too. Out for me, Lord. I mean, wow. Okay, that is incredible. So I know you said she had a Spiritual Vision Board party. Is that something that, like, tell me more about that? So for those of us who may want to throw a party, what would that look like if we wanted to do something like that?
So a Spiritual Vision Board party is easy. I actually used to do Spiritual Vision Board like presentations and workshops, and that's what led into Spiritual Vision Board Academy. But they're really easy. You can use my book as an outline. I also have a Spiritual Vision Board workbook, which is easier, but it's all about identifying, what are the goals that you want to achieve, having foam board, because it's easier to do a physical version. Well, let me back up. You don't have to do a physical version. If you really want to do a digital version, you can. So to which one of the 2 you want to create, and then just throwing a party, inviting some of your girlfriends over, and having the magazines and the colored markers, the scissors, the adhesive, and maybe some people want to bring their computers because they want to create a digital version, and then afterwards you guys want to share, this is my Spiritual Vision Board, these are the goals that I want to achieve this year. Do that. Actually, the very last presentation I held that was live was December 2020.
Wow.
Yeah, December, that was live. So that was December 2020. And what's funny about that, well, I guess it's not funny now because we know that right after that was COVID.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's what kind of led to doing everything online for me in Spiritual Vision Board Academy. But it was in a church. It was the very first time that I was asked to be the guest speaker for a Sunday service. So
Wow.
that was a huge thing for me.
Wait, so Dr. Cris, you minister too in that way?
Oh,
I mean, if you what's going on here? So
so no, that was a special occasion.
okay.
Someone asked, and I felt that God wanted me to do that at that time. So yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, I think that the spiritual vision board process is a ministry, but
Mhm.
I'm not a minister.
Okay. I
Yeah.
got you. I mean, similar. I feel like my show is my ministry, and it's also a testament to the fact that like when God gifts us with our talents, and he also provides us a vision for what he wants us to do, in that vision that he gives us and in that gift and in those roles, he is looking for us to minister to people through those jobs and through those roles and through those gifts, right? So
Oh, amen, Shana.
listen. So, it don't matter what you do, know that you are in ministry when you do it. Okay. I think going back to why I feel like this process that you've developed through the Spiritual Vision Board Academy is so important. It goes back to the fact that like we have to understand that God doesn't work on the clock that we work on. Like, I think we look at time as like, oh, I don't have enough time. But God doesn't move around time. He's not
Right.
looking at the 24 hours or the 7 days a week. That's not how God looks at things at all. So, time is something we worry about, we conceptualize, but God isn't. No, because if he wants to do it today, right now, this second, boom, it's done. If he wants to do it 5 years from now, that's still in God's timing. And I think too, Dr. Cris, and maybe you could speak to this too. I've recently, as I've transitioned out of my job, right, and I'm excited about actually going through the academy myself because I'm really looking forward to like seeing how God is about to do so many things. Like I get emotional just thinking about how the move that he's going to make, right? But I really recently learned how to um accept the fact that if God wants to do it, he's going to do it. And if he made the promise is going to be, he's going to fulfill the promise. And what I mean by that is, I wanted to own a coffee shop. Okay. I haven't told you this, Dr. Cris, but I had a vision for a coffee shop prior to me getting laid off. Like, I didn't even know I was going to be like laid off or whatever, but I just like woke up from a dream or whatever. And I was like, oh man, I really would like to have a coffee shop. So then they told us that they were going to lay 5% of the company off. And I remember like, first I went through the feeling of like, oh my goodness, what is that going to be like? I kind of did like a little panic moment. And then I remember going to sleep. I went to sleep that night. I woke up and I had a clear vision of what my coffee shop would look like. I knew what color it would look, what color it would be. I like literally plain as day what this coffee shop would look like. And I remember I walked in the kitchen, my husband was in here. I was like, well, if I get laid off, and I didn't know anything at the time, I was like, I'm just gonna open up a coffee shop. And he just like looked at me and I just walked away. And so I say that because like again, that vision of the coffee shop is very clear in my mind. I'm seeing the flowers because I'm picturing it very floral, very like Paris like, okay. Antique vintage like chandeliers in there, pink things, like a little telephone booth for people who want to go in there and take a call. I like it's very, very clear. But even though that is clear and I know that I'm going to do that, that might not mean right now. And I had to let go of the idea like, oh, I'm going to look at investors. I'm about to start reaching out to people who have coffee shops. And I'm like, oh, I'm about to build a plan around this and build a business plan and pitch it. And then I had to take a step back and say, like, that's not what God has told you to do right now. And at first I started to panic because I'm like, but if I don't do it right now, when am I going to do it? And then I said, okay, well, if God said he's going to do it for me, it might not be in 2024 where you're 33 years old, Shanae. God it might do it when you're 55. God might do it when you're 60. And then I had to ask myself, are you okay with that? Like, are you okay with when God says he's going to do it, he's going to do it, and being okay with that is not right now? Or are you going to pout and be upset and still work towards something that God didn't say is right now? And the wrapping my mind around that, I had a certain level of ease and peace, knowing like, Shanae, put that aside. You wrote it down. You already wrote it. That's the number one thing, right? Writing it down, making it plain. I wrote it down. It's there. If it's been written down, it's done. I don't have to do, that's not a task for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
My task is here where God has called me to be, and that's in this space and in this time. And am I okay with it? I had to ask myself, Shanae, are you going to be okay with it if he says it won't be for another 30 years? And so I like to ask people that. I remember I did an episode after I had that aha moment. It wasn't a lot of people who were able, like, connected to that at that time, but I do believe at some point that episode people will probably come back to that eventually, because that was a pivotal moment where I had to, like, okay, God, you're in control. I surrender, and surrendering is a huge part of whether or not you'll be able to manifest what God has for you, or if you won't. So I know I took a soapbox moment there, but I just, like, as I'm listening to what you've been able to build out, it's more than just like getting to what you want, right? It's more of the process of learning how God moves and becoming comfortable that you're not in control of anything. You can only do what God has told you to do at each step of the way, and then allow God to do that thing when the time is right, when you've done what you were supposed to do, when you focused in. So
yeah, that reminds me of Proverbs 16:9. So, we have these plans, but God orders our steps. So we can have all these plans what we want to achieve and when. So like I said, I wanted to be married at 27. I wanted 3 kids. I named my kids. So we can have all of these plans of what we want, but when we reframe what God wants for us, when we reframe our vision and we surrender it, let it go, know that the vision that he has shared with us will happen. It will happen. You just have to write it down, create it on a spiritual vision board, whatever you choose to do. It will happen. But what are the things that we need to do to prepare
that's a good
to
word.
achieve that vision? So what are the steps that we need to take in order to prepare for the vision that he has for us? So God shared with me a vision, and I really cannot remember how long ago, and it was as vivid as you have described. I am still waiting, and it has been some years, but I'm still waiting. And this, I guess, goes back to being obedient, because I know that I haven't been as obedient with my ministry as I need to be. So one of the things, and we've had this discussion before, God shared with me years ago, that I needed to quit my job, just, quit. and the way he shared it, it was so loud. Quit. And I didn't quit, because you get used to that income coming in. So because I was not obedient, it has taken longer for that vision to manifest.
That's a good lesson.
And I'll admit that to everybody that's listening. There has been times when I have not been obedient. And there's factors that you get. That's when fear and faith
Yes.
are, messing with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have bills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Real
and,
life.
and life comes into play. But I know in my heart that vision is going to occur. And with each Spiritual Vision Board Academy and every interview that I'm doing like today, yeah, I'm getting closer and closer to the vision that God showed me. So it's taken longer to get there, but it'll happen.
Yeah. And I want to say this too for those of us who are listening and watching. Also, I don't know if I can't speak for everyone, but for me, Dr. Cris, knowing that you're still practicing, that's what my therapist calls it. When you continue at something, you're still practicing what your Spiritual Vision Board Academy is about. And so to know that you still have things that you are also striving for and you also have goals for, it humanizes you. And sometimes people aren't honest about the fact that life is a journey and I'm still journeying through it just like everyone else. And I think to be able to be on the other side of hearing you, even as an expert, you still are practicing as you go on, as you go through life, which makes me understand and know that this is a personal experience for every single person.
Mm.
Every time someone goes through the Spiritual Vision Board Academy is personal.
Yes.
And I think that us understanding that it's a personal thing, it also takes that need to compare what somebody else has, or they got this sooner, or they were able to do this. When you understand how personal it is, you don't do that. So if someone wants to learn more about the Spiritual Vision Board Academy and your book, and they want to sign up for the next enrollment period, tell us how they can do that and what that looks like.
Sure. So I'm hosting a live event, so a live masterclass. It is scheduled for December the 18th.
Okay.
It is exactly 2 weeks before the very first day of January 1st, 2025. So exactly 2 weeks. And the strategy behind that is you want to prepare for the new year. So and in preparation for the new year, you're preparing for your goals, and then you're preparing to develop a spiritual vision board. So my thoughts are, you have this 2 week period to get ready to create your spiritual vision board. Once you enroll, the class itself, the academy itself is self-paced. So
Okay.
you can complete as many of the modules and the lessons that you like whenever you want to. But I think about, again, being intentional and taking that time to prepare before you jump into creating your spiritual vision board. So again, that masterclass is scheduled for December the 18th at 12 noon.
Okay.
I also have some freebies available. So for those who cannot wait until December the 18th, I have a digital vision board kit that you can download and you can start if you want to get started. I also have a digital getting started guide. So that will help you to get started thinking about, well, what are the goals that you want to achieve? So I can provide you with both of the links, Shanae, and then anyone who's interested can download either one of those freebies.
All the links will be linked below. And you can also access those links through my link tree. So I'll make sure all of that is available to you.
And let me just say one more thing. When you were talking about the coffee shop, I could see the way that you were describing it. It's so vivid. I cannot wait for you to open that coffee shop. I am looking forward to sitting down in that cozy coffee shop and having some coffee with you.
Thank you, Dr. Cris.
You're welcome.
I can see that happen. I can see that moment as well. And I'm really excited about when it happens. Yeah. Um, I love that you said that God always gives you more. And I think if we learn to have an abundant mindset, right? And we didn't really even touch on that today, but I'm sure that coincides with visual prayer and the Spiritual Vision Board Academy. We lack nothing. Even in me not maybe having a job right now, I lack nothing. And God is not a God of lack, right? So in understanding that God wants us to have more and have everything that the desires of our heart. I don't believe that God would have me to struggle or suffer or only have a little bit. And so I love the idea that even if it's not those of us who are maybe looking for a dream job, or maybe you don't even have a specific real true goal in mind, the idea that the visual prayer guide allows us to have a different type of prayer life, I think it also strengthens our ability to expand our minds to know that God can do way more, and stop asking God for little small things like, God, if you can just make it so that I can buy a car, what if you said, God, God, can you make it so that I buy the car that I really, really want, God, and I don't even have to have a high, bill or monthly payment, like maybe like stretching our prayers a little bit further than where they are now, and changing our mindset to be as big as what God is, right?
That's good that you've touched on that, because I talk about mindset and perception, because a lot of being able to manifest what it is that you're hoping to receive goes back to, is your mindset right? I mean, are you thinking abundantly? What is your perception on life? So we start there. We start there before we move into, okay, these are the things that I want, and these are the desires of my heart. And you have to get your mindset straight.
Right. So guys, if you're not willing to do some self-work, and y'all know I say this all the time, if you're not willing to do self-work, then this is not for you. This has to be a decision that you make, knowing that you are ready to peel back the layers. So I want to put that out there too. You're only going to get what you give it, right? But Dr. Cris, is there anything else that you want our listeners or our viewers to know?
So my contact information is the same across all social media. It's Ask Dr. Cris, except for LinkedIn. I'm Dr. Crystal Green Brown. Dr. Crystal Green Brown. But on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram is Ask Dr. Cris, AskDrCris. So there's no H there, CRIS. In terms of final words, so I have been practicing spiritual vision board process since, again, Thanksgiving of 2010. So you mentioned something about cars, which is funny. The beginning of visual prayer, I talk about the very first dream car that God blessed me with. And so currently I'm driving my second dream car, and I am looking for my third. So when I think about dream cars, and you guys can disagree with me if you don't, everybody has their own ideal version of, what's a dream car. Right. But if you were to look at what is the most reliable car, it would be a Lexus. And then Toyota is the second. So my first car was a Toyota, my first dream car, because prior to that, I had cars that would break down. I spent more money on repairs than I did. Yeah. So then when I turned it over to God, anyways, long story short, I know exactly what I want. And I've already placed it on my board. I know exactly color, exterior, interior. I know exactly what it is. So I'm just waiting for God to deliver that car. But whatever it is that you want, you have to be intentional. Your faith can be as small as a mustard seed. But God loves you, and he wants to bless you. And just how he has blessed me, how he's blessed Brandy, how he's blessed Shanae. I do want to say one more thing. So Shanae mentioned that in her church they talked about the Secret, the movie. There's some churches that are not quite open to that because they don't understand the process. And having said that, there are some Christians who are not open. They don't understand the connection between acts, believe, receive. Habakkuk 2:2, write the vision down and make it plain. But everything that is in The Secret, everything, because I've watched the movie several times, everything there is a scripture for. And that scripture is in my book, Visual Prayer. So you can pick up the book, you can join Spiritual Vision Board Academy, you can just email me and we can talk. It does work because God is not a liar and he wants to bless you.
I receive that and I believe that. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Cris, for being so open in the conversation, and even those people that may not even be ready yet, but the seed has been planted, and the inspiration is there to start somewhere. And I think the starting is really where the faith part is. I think a lot of people forget that taking the step to start is just as big. That's a big thing to do. And so just starting is what I would definitely advise. If you want change, start somewhere. Okay. So I really, really thank you so much, Dr. Cris. I cannot wait for further conversations that will evolve over time, just based on this conversation, as well as my experience as I enroll. And I mean, I have so many things, so I'm gonna have to narrow it down to, I'm gonna be that, like, y'all, I'm a student too. So I can't wait to be able to come back and share with you guys my experience. But thank you guys so much for watching this episode. Thank you so much for being connected. If you haven't already, make sure you're following me on Instagram and on TikTok at the Pink Elephant _ by Shanae. If you are a Facebook user, feel free to go over to Facebook. You can find me by searching Shanae Pringle or the Pink Elephant by Shanae. And also, guys, don't forget to do this. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already. You can hit the notification bell if you want to be alerted on new videos that come up as they are popping up in real time. And I will leave you guys with this because I love this saying. I don't remember where I heard it, but our ceiling is God's floor. Okay. So know that God is bigger than everything. And I think when we truly acknowledge the fact that God is bigger than anything and everything, we can surrender it all. So with that being said, you guys have an amazing day and I'll talk to you later. Bye, y'all.
Bye.